Yeah, it doesn't say anything on there. I mean, it's just a noise at this point in time.
We don't want to give everything away.
Well, we got a lot of episodes.
123 in the books almost.
Oh, nice. It's the last one of the week, that's for sure.
That's right. Thanks for joining us, folks. I'm John Najarian. He is, that way. I always forget, Pete. That way. He's Pete Najarian. Jared is up there. And we thank you for tuning in to The Rebel's Edge.
Yeah.
Where we only give you 1 minute of macro because when was the last time you made money on macro, folks? It's pretty damn tough.
It's a great backdrop, John. I mean, it's a good backdrop. It's something that I think exactly why we do what we do is it's a backdrop, but you got to trade off of that. That's not a trade. It's the trade that comes from that. So that's why we do what we do. And we give you a minute, and then we give you 4, we give you 2, and we give you another 2, and then bang, bang, bang. We're out. So We're ready to rock and roll.
Let's do it. 1 minute macro. Start the clock. There it goes. Pete, we've got the BLS, Bureau of Labor Statistics, tomorrow. That follows, of course, ADP, which showed hot jobs. Challenger Gray and Christmas, likewise. If we see another hot reading, you can bet a bunch of Fed speakers are going to come out and say, we're going to keep hitting this thing. That is my 1 minute macro.
Yeah, and mine continues to be Jerome Powell, which basically is what you're saying too, John. I mean, really the backdrop right now is the dollar still trading above 105. You've got the 10-year right around 4, even though it's eased back. And the 2 years eased back a little bit, but there's still that spread there, a full 1%. So there's a lot going on in the backdrop, but how do you trade that? Well, we're going to be talking about that in about 2 seconds here. Let's get after it, John.
That's right. Well, and when Pete said, yeah, we got a full point, that's a full point inversion, folks.
Yep.
I mean, ain't supposed to be inverted like that. When you see that, that's telling you the odds of recession keep going up. All right, let's talk about what else is going up today, Pete. And it ain't anything related to crypto or banks. No. Because if you're a crypto bank, sadly, like Silvergate, you know, God rest their souls, or even this one, Silicon Valley Bank Corp, or even Signature Bank, you're in trouble. And this one, SIVB, which is Silicon Valley Bank, down over 30%, Pete. They're going to have to issue more stock. They're going to do some of it as a convertible, meaning that you can convert from that debt into the stock and so forth. But wow, this thing is just getting hammered on huge volume.
Not only huge volume, John, but how about this? This is a stock that its range was, well, is now because it's at 52-week lows. It's down about 41%, but call it 156 with a high end of 597 rather. So this thing has been absolutely crippled, right? I mean, just absolutely just throttled. And you know what? You just wonder. I mean, it's kind of the Warren Buffett. It's like, well, you find out what's going on when the tide comes back. The tide has come back in Silicon Valley in a big way, and that is not a good thing. They're burning through their cash. They got bond losses. They're having to do all of this stuff that they're doing, John, just to kind of stay alive. It is not a good space right now for them out there with SIVB. This thing is under pressure, and I'm not so sure, John, that they're selling enough to be able to make the difference that they're going to have to make when you look at the fundamentals of the company right now.
Yep, that's a good point, Pete, because you might not want to issue as much stock, but you might not get a second bite of that apple. Or if you have to, right, it'll be a lot more expensive what you'll have to pay to get that cash. I'll point out also it's approaching 13 million shares, which is only about 14 times normal volume, Pete. That's an extreme turnover in that stock. All right, ASAN, this software maker, they topped revenue expectations. Asana's chief executive officer, this Dustin Moskovitz, announced plans to buy up to 30 million shares. I know, Pete, that you have said many times on TV, whether it's Jamie Dimon or somebody else, if they make a real commitment to the stock, that's something that you and other investors like to see and are willing to bet with them. Is that the case?
Absolutely. I mean, I think this was pivotal, John, and this is the reason why this stock is actually ripped to the upside today. It's on a nice big move, about 23% to the upside. As you mentioned, 30 million shares, not $30 million worth, 30 million shares is what he's talking about. He thinks it's undervalued. Might be right. When you look at what they're doing right now, they did still lose money, though, John. That always does bother us, of course, but they improved, and it's better than what the estimates were. They lost 15 cents. They were expected to lose 27. They beat on their revenue. They looked at their forecast, and that was very strong. So there's a lot of positives, I think, coming out of this. Specifically, though, to your point, when the CEO decides to make and founder decides to make that decision to buy that kind of size when it comes to the shares, I think that's a big, big statement right there that they think it is too cheap and it's going to maybe go higher.
Yeah. And, in rough terms, folks, just to put a bow on it, that's over $700 million. Like Pete said, 30 million shares, $700 million, roughly at the price that it's at right here. Mm-hmm. That is a big commitment. And so, yeah, I like following along with Pete on that trade. Mm-hmm. All right. General Motors. Pete, we did have unusual activity in this name. Back in February. There it is on the screen. That is not doctored or anything, folks. Directly from our history at Market Rebellion, you see General Motors, they were buying puts down in the 30s with the stock in the 40s. Well, where's the stock now, Pete? And what do you think when GM is making all these cuts and basically offering early retirement to almost every salaried position at the firm?
It's not a great sign, obviously, but John, outside of that, this just makes me think about one more thing on the macro side of things that I'd love to throw out to you. And I've been talking about this with a lot of the guys in Oklahoma that are not just energy guys. They're very smart banker type guys. There's a lot of people here in Florida that I talk to about this topic. With all this job growth, let me ask you this. All we've heard about is layoffs. So are these numbers real? That sounds like a terrible question, but I mean that. I mean, when you look at it, John, you go across Silicon Valley, it's like, oh, we're going to cut 10%. We're going to get 12%. We're going to do 10%. We're going to do 20%. They're doing all of this. And yet these job numbers look like, wow, people are really hiring. Man, they're really coming back. Where are they coming back? That's the next question, because everywhere I go, John, they lack employees, whether it's Planet Fitness or Walmart or Target or wherever. It seems to me like something else is going on behind the scenes. So I don't know exactly how to interpret the whole thing, but I will tell you this. It looks like GM's going to be cutting back on a pretty good chunk of folks as well.
Yeah. And when you buy somebody out, basically, folks, when you say, hey, I'll give you early retirement, I'll even open up your shares for free trading or whatever else, people tend to sort of assess, well, where can I go get a job unless I'm in a position where I can truly just stay retired? Now, we all know people are living longer and all that sort of thing. That plays into it, Pete, because, what do you want to be, a greeter at Walmart? Again, I'm not trying to slam people that do that, but if you're somebody who's an executive, because these are salaried positions, these are not hourly workers at General Motors. They are only offering this to salaried workers. So for you to go from that white collar job to a job where, hey, thanks for shopping at Walmart today. See you soon. Grab a cart.
Can I check your stub to see what exactly you've stolen and what you haven't? Because there's a lot of that going on, by the way, and that's no joke at all. Wasn't it Target, John, that said there were about $700 million worth that was being stolen? I mean, these numbers are crazy.
Yep. So, and keep in mind also, folks, that to when you see layoffs, like Pete's saying 10% and so forth, all of those cost money. When you're laying somebody off, you're paying for it. Even Elon, when he was laying people off, Pete, and he was saying, well, geez, we don't know if we can afford to pay $150 million to get rid of all this dead weight we've got around here, well, you're going to have to find a way. Either that or you're going to bankrupt the company, because those people are going to get what's coming to them when you lay them off. That's just, depending what state you're in, it's really tough to just cut somebody. All right, let's go to General Electric. So two big Dow stocks, just to kind of finish it up, Pete. General Electric was one of these surviving original Dow stocks. And today, surprisingly, a very good day for them. They had a nice rally going on. Basically, they had a virtual investor day early this morning, and it went well. And my question to you is, would you buy it?
I'm not sure I want to chase it, John, because the stock is hitting 52-week highs. It's been on a great run. It was up 8%, at least earlier. Right before we came on, it was up about 8% or so. New highs, well over 94. So, but I would say this, they sure are projecting things. Their outlook is pretty amazing. They're talking about free cash flow of $3.4 billion, up to about $4.2 billion. Their earnings, they're looking for $1.60 to $2. Now, as you and I were talking about before we came on, they're somewhere in the middle there on that. I mean, but I think the reality is they are projecting things to be very strong right now. So the stock has certainly absolutely made a great move. It's at 52-week highs. I don't think I'd want to chase it up here, John. I like what they're doing. I think they're doing a lot of things better than they've ever done before at GE. And so for those reasons, it's a great stock to take a look at, but I'm not so sure you want to be chasing it up here at this point in time.
Analysts aren't chasing it either, Pete, because General Electric, they said adjusted profit we're forecasting going forward is going to be $1.60 to $2. So call it 180, right in the middle. Okay. The street is estimating 194. So if they come out and they miss, they could be given back 8% or more very quickly on the next earnings call. So just be aware of that. Yeah. They're basically telling you it's not as strong as it looks right now, but they can't really say that. So instead, they're giving you a really wide range. All right, Pete, I've got one that is deep end of the pool. And whenever Pete and I say that, we mean no offense to people that, oh, you're too dumb, you can't trade this. No, that's not what we mean. We mean if you've not traded a derivative that's only got 1 day to live, an option like an ODTE, 1 day till expiration. This is one of those situations because these options expire tomorrow. They've got earnings today, and that stock is GAP, GPS. So GAP stores, stock's 12, or it was when this hit on our heat seeker this morning, $12 a share. They're buying the 1250 calls. A good earnings call, Pete, this thing pops to 15. Because that's where it came from on the way down. And now it's making a move like it wants to go higher. But be very aware. This is a binary bet. It's something or nothing. Earnings are after the close. So you won't have a chance to cut your losses if that's the case. And you will have a chance on the other side, though, if you can trade stock in the after hours to sell stock against this trade. So be aware of both of those things. That's what I mean by deep end of the pool.
Yep, we're going to stay in that deep end, John. Now it's gone from 10 feet to 12 feet because I've got Macy's for you, and they expire tomorrow as well. And what they're doing is they're buying the March 10th expiring 21.5 call. Stock was near 21. It's still right there. It's about 2070, somewhere in that range, but it's just underneath 21. They were paying 11 cents to 15 cents for these options. What makes this an interesting trade, in my opinion, John, is there is a decent short interest. They've got quite a bit of debt on the sheets. And so this is one of these names where could it maybe just have like a little bit of a short squeeze to the upside? Maybe tomorrow? Sure could. Anything that's positive could really project this stock to the upside. That's what people are playing off of. And it's very limited risk in terms of these options that are going for 11 cents up to about 15 cents. So it is staying in that deep end of the pool. You got to understand exactly what those risks are. The specific risk being, hey, these options are done as of tomorrow afternoon. So you just have to know that going in and know that Macy's is one of those stocks. It's not a huge short interest. It's not as big as many, but it certainly has a decent enough short interest. and with the debt, that there's a little bit of a room there for a bit of a squeeze potentially.
I agree. Well, Pete, I know you've got some interesting stuff coming our way. Lately, we've been always starting off with football because, of course, between the Super Bowl, now the XFL, and soon the USFL, we've got a lot of stuff going on in the football space. So why don't you kick it off with whatever you've got for the NFL today?
All right, so we're going to stick with the NFL because the NFL is 24/7, 365, like you just said, John, and it is. It just really, truly is. There is nothing like the NFL because as soon as the Super Bowl happens, you start talking about free agency, you start looking at the combine, you start talking about the draft. You've got all of these things going on. And March 15th, we kick off with the free agency side of things or whatever, where things really get pretty interesting. Here's one for you, John, that you may or may not like. I kind of like what we're seeing here. The Chicago Bears. So there are 5 teams that have an incredible amount of room underneath the cap. And that salary cap of, what do I have it written down? $224.8 million, John, is the salary cap. So there's plenty of room. How about your Chicago Bears? They have $100 million worth of room. What should they do with that? I mean, those are the questions that I think when you look around, you've got the Falcons have 70 million. You've got the Texans with 41 million in room. The Raiders, by the way, after the Derek Carr issue, they've got plenty of room. They got about 40 million in room. Bengals, believe it or not, the Cincinnati Bengals, 35 million in cap room. So there's a lot that could be happening as we go into the free agency market. And there are teams that'll try to figure out ways to get involved. But I think, John, when you look at it right now, I look at your Chicago Bears, $100 million. I'll tell you what I would do. I'd get a couple of guys out there who might want to protect Justin Fields, who's a damn good quarterback. And I don't know why anybody talked about, well, maybe they ought to draft a different quarterback. Maybe they ought to get rid of him. The guy led the team in rushing. He rushed for over 1,000 yards. He threw for a couple of 1,000 yards. He's a big physical beast of a guy. And he might want to get a little help from the offensive line, John, because he had 55 sacks last year. This is a mobile guy. He's not a guy who just goes back and stands there like a statue. He literally can move all over the place and still 55 sacks. So I'm just wondering, what do you think they need to do? You probably know the Bears better than anybody. Do they need more on the O-line? They certainly must need something on the O-line, but where else do they maybe have to start addressing things with that $100 million they've got?
Well, you're right. And I think you mentioned, Pete, an edge rusher. I know that's not for Justin Fields, but you mentioned that. And I think you're right. I think you're also right that anything that takes the pressure off, if they could get, and with $100 million salary, they've got a lot that they could spend. They could go after a big wide receiver, Pete. And if you have the sort of receiver, granted, the Vikings aren't going to let that guy go.
No.
But if you could get a receiver of that quality, and there's a couple guys that are close. There's nobody really, in my mind, better than the guy the Vikings have. But if you can get a guy who can threaten and needs double coverage, that's going to open it up for the other guys. And I think that would be a great thing too. Of course, offensive line makes the most sense. So I'd say get that Corey kid, that big guy that can play almost anywhere on the line out of North Dakota State. He's a beast. Love to see that kid in a Bear uniform from, again, North Dakota State. I'll also point out, Pete, that you're right. Salary cap's $208 million. You know what it was when it was first instituted in 1994? I had to look it up. $34 million. There are plenty of players who are making that per year right now. Justin Fields will be one of them when this contract's up. Justin Fields will be one of those. So $34 million was the entire cap for all the team, all 53 players or whatever. So if you don't spend it, they take it anyway. So even the Bears can't, cry poor when they've got $208 million to spend and they've got $100 million salary cap room. So hopefully they make some of those moves, Pete.
Yeah, I think they will. And I think Jimmy Garoppolo might have a spot in Atlanta, John. I mean, they got room. They've been getting rid of people and, who knows? I mean, there's a lot of different quarterback moves. We talked about that yesterday, but there's still plenty of different guys out there who haven't signed, including Aaron Rodgers, who most likely looks like if it's either Green Bay or the Jets, and it's kind of leaning towards the Jets. He's following in the path of his predecessor. I mean, it's just unbelievable, which means if he goes to the Jets, John, for a year or two, then maybe he finishes up with the Vikings. Who knows? I mean, stranger things can happen. It happened before.
Yep.
The second one we're going to go to, John, is how about the Minnesota State high school hockey? Now, this is something for people who don't know Minnesota, and John actually played high school hockey. He was a goalie for a period of time. But let me tell you something.
Prove it.
Yeah. The amazing thing is, John, they'll put 17, 18,000 people into the stadium for 4 straight days as they go through the Minnesota State tournament. It's absolutely amazing. And a lot of these guys have already been drafted or will be drafted. It's amazing the talent levels. I don't know if we got it on or not, but we've got some great shots. There we go. There we go. This is what Minnesota's hockey tournament is also famous for, is they always love the whole hair day. And the guys do such crazy things and they have so much fun. You know, sometimes we forget these guys are high school kids. They're having a lot of fun out there, and why not let them have that fun? They do a great job, and every year, man, they skate up when they're introduced, and they're just proudly got crazy stuff going on. But, John, interesting, if you remember this, John, I got a great story for you about this tournament. So years ago, Stan Hubbard, 1979, he bought the station that and decided he's going to put it on television, the Minnesota High School Tournament, for anything and everybody that's in that area there. It was unbelievable. Here's who he flew in: Cheryl Teagues, Richard Dawson, and a guy by the name of Howard Cosell. And anybody who remembers that name knows he was a great announcer. He did a lot of boxing. He did some football. He did not do hockey until he came to Minnesota. And he actually did the color commentary for the championship game. But, John, it's the usual suspects are there this year. You've got Cretan Durham Hall. They do a great job. Maple Grove, Edina, Minnetonka, Hill Murray, Lakeville South, Andover. I mean, they've got a lot of unbelievable teams that are going to be fighting in this one. Do you have any memories or any thoughts about the tournament? Because it's so great every single year.
Oh, yeah. Pete, I remember, because I'm that age, I'm that old, that I remember there was a team from Warroad, Minnesota. And Warroad, Minnesota is all the way up on top in the top of Minnesota. God, what do they call that area?
Iron Range.
Iron Range. Thank you. Yeah. So he was a ranger. That's what the nickname is for the people that live up there, Rangers. And they had a guy up there named, I think it was Henri Boucher. And, there are a lot of Canadian, French, and Native American, Native Canadian peoples that interbred and basically created like a super hockey player. Yeah. And that team used to win every year, Pete.
Yep.
And it was a team where I think they might have had like 16 kids on the team. A big hockey team might have 40, 50 kids and, however many complete lines and so forth. These guys, Henri Boucher, never left the ice. He played the entire game. So that kid was a beast and went on to the NFL, sadly got his eye almost taken out by a guy that ended up being charged with a felony, I believe, in the NHL. But anyway, yeah, I remember that. And I think that these kids are fantastic to watch. They call it the Frozen Four when you get to the NCAA, but Frozen Four holds nothing on this, Pete. This high school state tournament is the best, especially with those mullets.
Or the hair. It's phenomenal. You know what? And just to put a bow on that whole thing with Warroad, John, they're in Class A now. So there used to be just one class of hockey. Now there's two. There's A and there's AA. They're part of the A, which is the smaller. They actually, I think it was an overtime game, but they beat St. Cloud Cathedral in their bracket as well. So they're still in it. They're still great. The girls are unbelievable, and the boys continue to be right there and potentially could be the state champs once again because they've had some great teams up there on the Iron Range. But A lot of fun. And Minnesota hockey, I'll tell you what, there is nothing quite like it. You can talk Texas football all you want. You can talk track maybe down here in Florida or Texas. Hockey in Minnesota, that is like nothing else.
Yeah, it's special, folks. Well, thank you for joining us. We will be back Monday with another Rebel's Edge. Remember, we don't do Fridays, but we thank you for joining us. I'll come to you this afternoon for 3 at 3. And until Monday, Pete, have a good one, everybody.
Giddy up.
Introducing our new series of intimate in-person trading conferences in some of the greatest cities in America. It's Market Rebellion Live. Next up, this June in Sonoma County, California. Savor some of the finest wines in America while you level up your trading with Pete Najarian, John Najarian, AJ Monty, Ryan Mastro, and Bill Johnson. Sonoma is limited to just 25 seats to ensure every guest gets personal attention, so act now. Tickets are going fast.